Welcome to Brainstorm MTG. I'm ELD, and this is Fast Effect Double Speed Magic the Gathering. Here we actually have the Mana Drain Open, a special treat. This is a mobile setup here, so going to have a little bit of difficulty from time to time with glare, but hopefully be able to identify the cards on James's side of the table. Keep you up to speed with the action as we go through this at twice the speed. Jared, last year's champion on shops. Very solid choice. Regardless of the metagame, it is just amongst the most powerful strategies possible in the format, having access to Mishra's Workshop, a reusable Black Lotus, along with all of the best acceleration. And at this point in Vintage, essentially using it to deploy a series of robots. Here we have Thorn of Amethyst off of Ancient Tomb. It looks like a Mox Emerald proxy. And James contemplating Force of Will. Shops decks a lot lighter on disruption than they have been in the past. But the disruption that they do have, they can employ a bit faster due to the new Foundry Inspector. He has been played in most of the lists at this point. And what he really does is makes all your spells cost one less. You are just playing artifacts. So it lets you deploy cards like Sphere of Resistance a lot more smoothly. Effectively negating them just for you, allow you to continue to pile on any of the disruptive elements that you might draw. James getting out underneath that Thorn with a couple of Moxes. And there is the Foundry Inspector. And Jace the Mind Sculptor showing his versatility, actually coming down and bouncing the Foundry Inspector. Expect some card drawing from Jace before he goes away. Very possible James will draw into exactly what he needs. 3 cards is quite a lot. Sapphire from Jared joins that Emerald. His life total, really just a resource in this type of matchup. Oath is essentially gonna win. Oh, here we go. Walking Ballista, taking out the Jace. Oath is essentially going to win regardless of your life total, anything within reason. At least these standard builds, that would be the... And we've got some delving going on here. For Treasure Cruise, it looks like. Both Dig Through Time and Treasure Cruise making such a huge impact in Blue's portfolio of card drawing. See here, James actually creeping back up towards library range. If that library becomes active, that's likely to be a very bad scene for shops, both because of the card advantage, and it would imply that James hasn't had to use cards like Force of Will, which he is actually forced to do here. A main deck Red Elemental Blast. Possibly could have some targets in shops. Occasionally they do run Phyrexian Metamorph. That card is blue. James building his mana base here. And it's going to be Planeswalker, Arlen, something. I did actually play against this card today. And it makes 2/2 wolves, and then it can also lightning bolt creatures and flip. So an interesting board control card. Not typical not standard, I should say, by any stretch, has been tinkered with these Oath players, kind of making the deck a form of Super Friends. Jace the Mind Sculptor pulling a lot of work there as well. I believe the intention is to try and have an alternate path to victory. You can't really play creatures in Oath outside of your Oath targets. So these Planeswalkers that can generate those can potentially be a successful strategy. And we've got the Fleetfoot smashing into our Planeswalker friend. It is gone. 5 damage. Hasty. And we'll see if Jared can continue to crew. And Hangerback Walker, that will do the job. 5 more damage. Jared going to just continue to draw creatures here if the magic gods smile upon him, and he'll just be able to continue keeping that pressure. James's mana base is just getting absolutely huge. Is typically really good against workshops, but this board is threatening to close things out in a hurry. And that is 4 mana. No idea. Traxos, maybe? Didn't come into play tapped. I have no idea. If anybody can Sherlock out what that card was over there, be sure to leave that in the comments. And we've got Jared picking up game number 1 here. So Jared, perhaps not 100% positive that James is on Oath. He did not see Oath or a Forbidden Orchard. There are a lot of different ways to play blue in Vintage. But this does look like Oath. Looks like we might have Punishing Fire in there. It may have actually been Punishing Fire. That might be my legacy eyesight playing tricks on me. Workshops thought to be one of Oath's kind of better matchups, a deck that is kind of tuned to beat Workshops in terms of the way that those strategies line up. Oath of Druids as a card does a ton of work versus what is essentially a creature aggro deck at this point. But Shops does have some main deck plays that can work around that. Of course, you have the sideboard. There are cards like Grafdigger's Cage that can really shut down the Oath strategy. But in terms of just things that are available to you in the main deck, you do have cards like Walking Ballista and Arcbound Ravager, which can combo to do massive damage to the face in very short order. You also have Manlands with Ravager, which can allow you to potentially sneak a ton of counters onto the factory, and you can swing without ever having a creature in play during Oath's upkeep. So there are some interesting plays, largely with Ravager. Card is very strong. Funny to think of a 2-mana 1/1 as being so good, but if you played through Mirrodin Block Standard, you would certainly have some good perspective on exactly how powerful that is. At that point, Standard decks, literally good enough to beat Vintage decks at times with the affinity lists, Disciple of the Vault, serving kind of a similar role to what Walking Ballista does now, effectively doubling the power of the Arcbound Ravager. In that instance, getting 1 life loss trigger for each artifact going into the graveyard, whereas the Walking Ballista allows you to double the attacking power and then shotgun their face. Solve the mulligans here. James just leading out with a land go. It is a fetch land at least, providing some protection from Wasteland. And then we have Mana Crypt, the proper factory here in Winter, and Sphere of Resistance, which is a very reasonable start versus an opponent that just went land go. If they weren't able to do anything on the first turn, very likely they won't be able to do anything on the second turn, making Sphere a very valuable play. And Force of Will has been drawn out, leaving James with just 4 cards in hand. Tropical Island is the call off of the fetch land. And going to go ahead and use a Nature's Claim on the Mana Crypt, hoping to bottleneck Jared's mana. It's a difficult gambit to take versus shops. Even if you could see their hand and know exactly what was going on, they do have top decks that completely undermine that strategy. Of course, you draw a Mishra's Workshop, and you've got all the mana you need. See if that happens here. We got Strip Mine, Revoker, and a Workshop off the top. What a savage. That is exactly what I was talking about. That is just brutal. This is the first time I'm seeing these matches as well, and you just couldn't draw any better there. So now James, having spent that Nature's Claim, finds himself facing down the full fury of Jared's hand. Going to be Foundry Inspector, and that's going to allow him to get both of these into play. Oh, he's actually just going to swing with the Factory instead, holding on to the Revoker in hand. And it looks like Punishing Fire actually took out. That looks like a Punishing Fire to me. We'll see how that goes. 2 more damage coming in. So we've got Factory and Revoker teaming up for 4 damage per turn. And another Foundry Inspector. This one might stick around. This is 1 or 2 turns away from death. He does have some draws that could close it out here. This is a terrible spot for James. Even Oath of Druid's not going to save him. We do see Stranded in his hand. No green mana to cast it. There's a Revoker. 7 damage coming in. And there's Walking Ballista to actually close it out. Not going to give James another draw. So Jared taking it down in 2 and remaining undefeated since last year's Mana Drain Open. That's all for this one. If you enjoyed the video, please help grow the channel by subscribing. You'll be notified when we upload new videos like Fast Effect, Double Speed Magic with commentary, or Untapped, our raw tournament gameplay. Thanks for watching.